on behalf of Golf Saskatchewan, our volunteers, staff, board members, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, especially Heather Hynes, Dallas Mengel on presenting some very important information before we get started on this golf season, which is not that far away. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Heather Hynes.
Sure, thanks so much. I'll go to the screen share and then hopefully everyone's able to see that. Are we good so far?
You bet.
Awesome. All right. So you guys will be officially my first sport I'm working with that get to play their sport. So that's exciting. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been working in high performance sport for 18 years, and I work full-time with high performance athletes with the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan and the Canadian Sports Centre of Saskatchewan. So typically working in an individual one-on-one setting or in group sessions like this, really helping athletes understand the importance of a foundational nutritional diet to support performance. And I've kind of summarized a couple key topics in the next couple of slides to hopefully allow you to get the most out of your game, but also to manage the days that are quite different right now and maybe don't have the structure that we're used to, and that can have quite a dramatic impact on our food intake. So I've been doing a lot of education with athletes to just get them to really think about some of their nutritional strategies in either managing or modifying body composition now that we don't have our typical training environment such as gyms or other ways of being able to help us with body comp as well. So I just want you to, I won't spend too much time on this slide, but I just want you to think about how much your training has perhaps changed over the last 6 weeks, how those changes might impact your energy needs from food, so your overall calorie intake, and really take a look at what your day looks like right now, and how that might be impacted by a change of work schedules, family commitments, schedule with sleeping and waking time, which can be really challenging when we don't have necessary things to do in our day, and school and work commitments have definitely changed quite a bit. So just looking at how this pandemic has had an impact on how we are able to train, and then how that then impacts what we are consuming and when we are consuming foods. So I've had lots of my high performance athletes get them to really think about what their goals might be during this time. Being realistic around setting some overall nutritional goals and how they can manage those goals with an at-home training program, and then for your sport leading into when courses open up again, and how we can use some of these strategies that we can work on now to then really set us up for success when the courses do open. So different goals in regards to really looking at how we can manage our overall food intake and the types of foods that we might be choosing. We're also going to be looking at really maximizing the training diet for performance and looking at what types of foods we would want to be putting on our plate. And I would say the silver lining to this environment in which everyone is spending a lot of time at home is that we can really get some foundational skills with prepping our own food, which I think is really important. And because when you go back to courses, you'll need to be bringing your own food, thinking about what types of things that you should be bringing in order to maximize performance. If you do have specific nutrition goals that you're working on over this time, these would be some of the areas that you might want to focus in on. I've had lots of my athletes that have asked me, well, how do we hold on to our strength when gyms are closed, or more, I would say, traditional ways of weight training. And obviously you can do lots of different things at home, and Dallas will touch on that, but also how you eat can impact body composition as well. So I've worked a lot with my athletes looking at protein timing and really having an awareness of our protein sources within our food, to make sure that we're looking at our foods and what those foods are actually offering to our body. So perhaps increasing the amount of protein, or, which is more typical with the North American diet, at least spreading out your intake of protein throughout the day. Other nutritional goals to work on at this time, especially in preparation for the heat, which impacts your sport a lot, which is managing hydration status and actually planning out your hydration for the day. So starting your hydration early in the day and actually monitoring it and planning it for the rest of the day. So focusing on having water as often as possible, but going at that slowly if you're not someone that's currently drinking a lot of water. Because we've had such a shift in the amount of energy that our body might require, because we don't have our typical training requirements or the access to training facilities right now as perhaps we're used to, that shift in energy requirements can really place a greater emphasis on our intake of fruits and vegetables. So we still like to see volume on our plate, but we don't have the same energy requirements. So we do want to have a shift towards fruits and veggies versus some higher carbohydrate-based foods such as breads, pastas, and other types of grains. And then because we are spending so much more time at home, it can be a really good time to think about learning new skills in the kitchen and actually trying out new recipes. So you'll see with lots of the foods that I encourage athletes to take on the course with them, it is based on things that you can make yourself and not have to purchase and eat out of a wrapper. One of the biggest things with being at home all day is really trying to focus in on having a consistent eating schedule. So not going long periods of time without eating. This would be showing an example of someone who's only eating 3 times a day. This is more what we want to be shooting for, which is a nice steady release of energy as we go throughout the day. This is very helpful for maintaining a healthy body composition. So providing your body with fuel every 2.5 to 3 hours. And when we are providing fuel, making sure that we have a source of protein there, that's what keeps a higher metabolism or a rate in which we go through our calories quicker, which can be really helpful for maintaining a healthy body weight. We also know that we want to kind of set some foundational skills around wake up time. So for any of the junior athletes on the call or those that have a flexible at-home schedule, trying to be consistent with wake up times and sleep times can be really helpful. So having those consistent times so that we then know when to be consuming our food is very important. If we have big sleep-ins and a lot of late nights, that can really play havoc with when we are eating and what we are eating. So I'm spending a lot of my days helping athletes with not only nutrition planning, but also sleep and performance, and how much that can have an impact on not only sport performance, but also body composition. We know that if we're staying up later in the evening, then we're definitely eating different types of foods or crave different types of foods. So it can be really helpful to set a schedule for your day as much as possible. So trying to keep your meals balanced and really focusing in on hydration and thinking about the impact that it can have on your body and just overall health in regards to hydration status. And there's been lots of education circulating in regards to a healthy diet and immune function, in that our immune cells require fuel from carbohydrates, protein, and fat, and they also require optimal hydration status. So the more we can focus in on drinking the amount of fluids that our body requires, which for most on the call would be around 3.5 to 4 liters of water per day. Anything that is liquid, that is non-alcoholic, will hydrate the body, even if it has a source of caffeine. Not that you want to have 3.5 or 4 liters of coffee in a day, but it is a liquid and it will also hydrate the body. But ideally, most of your fluids coming in the form of water. So I use these athlete plates a lot for many of my athletes that are unaware of the amount to put on their plate. You can look at whether it's a training day or a playing day, would be the plate there at the top. And then if it's a rest day, it would be more half your plate covered in fruits and veggies, which is a big shift for most individuals in regards to how we are feeding ourselves. So really focusing in on foods that have a high density of vitamins and minerals, but don't have a high, I would say, overall caloric value when we don't need it, perhaps on some of our rest days. If we're looking at holding on to strength, looking at those protein sources within our food, like I mentioned before, and spreading them out as much as possible. For lots of the junior athletes I work with, using this time to actually look at our food labels and identify some of our protein sources can also be important. So here's some common ones that you'll find in most refrigerators or pantries, depending on the types of foods that you like to include. Lots of these foods would be a great addition to any meal or snack that you're having. This right here is just tofu, so looking at more plant-based protein sources as well, or at least bringing that into the routine whenever possible. That might become a necessity as we look at the amount of animal sources of protein that we have access to right now, to be starting to include more plant-based sources of protein. I also wanted to touch on some of our timing of food and fluid intake, because this can have a direct impact on performance once the courses open up. And I find that lots of athletes have perhaps some of their own strategies, some strategies that work really well, and some that maybe don't work so well, but we just kind of continue doing what we're doing. So hopefully you find maybe some key takeaways from these next couple of slides that you're able to implement to maximize your performance. So if we're looking at things to consume before going out onto the course, ideally we would have a meal, I would say about 2.5 hours prior to playing. If it's you have an early morning tea time, then that's obviously going to have an impact on the amount of food that you feel comfortable consuming beforehand. But when we're looking at pre-training or pre-game fueling, this is just really seen as an energy top-up. So when we're looking for an energy top-up, all you're trying to do here is just have a slight increase in blood sugar, or the energy that we have circulating in our blood. That's coming predominantly from carbohydrate-based foods. If you feel comfortable combining your carbohydrate foods with a source of protein, so cheese and crackers or Greek yogurt with a banana, then you can definitely do so. But if you feel like you just want a little energy top up, then you can be doing it with any of these examples. The benefit of the pretzels there at the bottom is also the sodium content, in that when we have foods that have a higher salt content, we therefore retain more of the fluids that we take in if we're drinking water along with it. So if you're having a handful of pretzels and then you have your water bottle on the go, that can be helpful to maintain hydration as well. If you're looking at foods to take in during a round, this is where I find that most of my athletes have specific patterns and habits already. If your pattern right now, especially if you're playing 18, is to have nothing, then you might want to bring in something, because you're definitely going to see an enhancement in mental performance and hopefully golf performance as well. Our body requires fuel to be available to it on a regular basis, so we don't want to go extended periods of time with no food. If we look at requirements for during exercise, golf would be at the lower end of that range. So getting between 25 to 30 grams of carbohydrate, which is the CHO per hour, would be a good guideline. Because your sport involves walking and not necessarily running or jumping, you can also usually tolerate a little bit of protein. So because it doesn't have the same energy requirements as, let's say, a soccer game or basketball game, you can be a little bit more liberal with your protein that's coming in as well. And so looking at other foods that you might enjoy that also have some protein, or adding some protein with some of your snacks listed here. I have sports drinks listed at the top, but that's definitely not to say that they are the best choice at all. It's just to show you their composition. Both Gatorade and Powerade are intended for consumption during exercise. They have 6% carbohydrate, meaning they have 6% sugar, or 6 grams of sugar per 100 mils. That is the actual composition of a sport drink that you would want. If you're drinking another type of product that has 0 sugar, then it's going to have 0 impact on your performance. So we want sugar. So when we're reading the label of different products like BioSteel, Drink the Pink, or other types of products, and it's promoting 0 sugar, well, then that's 0 benefit. We require the sugar when we're looking for performance mentally and physically. Also looking at different things that you can make, like energy balls, there's just a picture there, or making yourself a sandwich and having half of it. If you're using fruit juice, usually I recommend diluting it down so that it doesn't have as high of a carbohydrate content. But any of those examples there, or really any source of food that you enjoy that's giving your body around 30 grams of carbohydrates is what you would want to be packing and taking along with you. For after a game, or after if you're going out for a practice, you can get really specific and calculate your requirements based on your body weight. Or you can just look for a general guideline of around, 50 to 60 grams of carbohydrate and around maybe 15 to 25 grams of protein. But if you are getting specific, it is based on your body weight, and the carbohydrate requirements would probably not be as high as the calculation stated here, and that's because your sport is quite different from many other sports in the amount of actual muscle glycogen or muscle energy that will be used up. So these would be a couple of examples. You don't get all of them, but you could choose one. Whichever one kind of suits your fancy. They're all giving you an optimal amount of carbohydrates and protein. Most of the research that's been done in recovery choices has been based on dairy protein, and that's because dairy protein is a very fast absorbing protein. So if you have a lot of muscle damage, it's going to result in the best muscle recovery. That really comes into play if you have another tea time within the next 8 hours. So if you're playing every single day or lucky enough to play twice in a day, then you would want your recovery to be really speedy. Usually what I recommend for athletes is just to be organized so that when they finish, they can go home and have a meal. And then that meal would actually be their recovery. The benefit of something like a smoothie is you're also getting your fluids in there as well. The only electrolyte that really needs to be coming in recovery is salt, and that's found in pretty much all of our foods, so no problems there. There aren't really any other electrolytes that we sweat out to the demands that they need to then be replaced right after a round of golf or really any type of aerobic sport. So just some take homes, really focus in on balanced meals and consistent meal times. That can have a huge impact on play performance once the courses open up, is just being consistent with when you're actually eating. Focusing on supper being the smallest meal of the day, that's a real struggle for most people. They're not used to eating in that way. But whenever possible, you really want to front load your day with energy that allows your body to be fueled for what the demands of the day actually are. Focusing in on fruits and vegetables first. That's a really important one, especially if we're not doing any physical activity on any of these next coming days, is that we can still get volume without getting a lot of caloric load. Always fuel for the demands of the day. So if it's a rest day, we physically don't require as much energy to be coming in. Trying to set a routine whenever possible. So once you know your tea times and you're looking at how those tea times are going to be affecting when you're eating or what you're eating, being aware that you have to be packing your own food and taking it along with you, and doing some planning in advance so that you have some good options to have with you. And we can also learn by trial and error. So if you have a really good round and you're wondering, well, that didn't just happen by chance, take a look at how you ate, how you hydrated, how you slept. All of that's impacting performance. Limiting liquid calories as much as possible. That's just an overall health message, but lots of the time we can take in a lot of excessive liquid calories. Being mindful when snacking. Again, when we don't have much of a schedule, snacking can become more of a source of entertainment than anything else. So trying to be as mindful as possible when we are fueling the body. And then finishing off by monitoring your progress. So for any athletes that are really looking to maximize performance, I do like different tracking to be used, not counting calories, but tracking in which an athlete's looking at when they're eating, roughly the types of things that they're taking in, and then how that resulted or impacted their overall performance. If you have any questions that come up after this, or this has kind of sparked questions that you have, or as you are playing a couple rounds of golf and you're wondering different things to be including, I have no problem at all with athletes sending me questions via email. So my email address is right there. Or if you have any questions that you want to ask right now, you're more than welcome to do so.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's some great information, Heather. And I know Cade here, our 2018 Men's Am champion, has a question for you.
All right.
Yeah, Heather, can you hear me? I want to
Yep.
make sure okay. Just for myself and then any other junior golfers out there that are going to play college golf or current college golfers. So most of our Monday rounds are 36 holes in a day. So we're on the course sometimes. I mean, normally 9 up to I've had 11 hours out there, especially when it's hot. So how would you suggest that we plan our meals? So we do get, after 18 holes, we'll get a box lunch from the host tournament, which normally includes a little sandwich, maybe a bag of chips or a cookie, and that's it. So how would you manage preparation for that to get ready for that?
Yeah, the trickiest thing, especially for quality in the heat, is refrigeration. And so if we have access to, having any type of team staff that can have like a full cooler full of food, that can help with the quality, especially of protein that we might have access to. If you have a decent break in the middle, and if possible, I would be asking for 2 box lunches. If that's not possible, then I would be supplementing it with your own food. So I would start with different types of like really energy concentrated food, like different bars. So whether it was like a Cliff Bar, a Power Bar, or other types of bars like that. I've also had athletes that'll use like a third-party tested meal replacement supplement. So something that's just in a powdered form, that's going to bring in an additional like 350 calories. That's going to be a pretty good composition of carbohydrates and protein in a liquid form, so that they could then have their box lunch and then top that up by the additional calories coming in a fluid form. And then I would look at variety, especially in foods that you feel that you can consume during a round. The challenge I would assume with that, just like for lots of my athletes that have to do their sport over an extended period of time, is that if we get bored with our choices, we start to eat less. And the heat can really suppress the appetite. So the more that we can plan for variety, even if it means we end the day with extra, then that's way better than not having enough.
Right. Okay.
Excellent. Looks like Scotty Allen has a question, Heather, for you.
Yeah.
Heather, there's you mentioned power bars and everything. Is there kind of one go-to that's better than the rest? You mentioned Cliff Bar, and I've heard of multiple. I guess got sucked into marketing too much. I always thought Cliff Bar was one of the better ones out there.
Yeah.
And what's kind of top of the list for ideal on the golf course?
Yeah, you're really looking at the composition, and the thing that happens with lots of the marketed sports foods is they're not marketed to anyone who's actually trying to perform. They're marketed more in like the diet environment, in which they're really suppressing the amount of carbohydrates. Whereas as an athlete who's looking to maintain mental performance and physical performance, we are carbohydrate dependent, so we want carbohydrates. So I would look at the label and look for something that has around 40 to 50 grams of carbohydrate and between 10 to 15 grams of protein, and that's a Cliff Bar. Like a Cliff Bar has 45 grams of carbohydrate and 10 grams of protein. And then the Cliff Builder Bar, which maybe would be more something you would eat after if you were just stuck on having bars, because that one has 20 grams of protein. So as a bar, that one would be up there for sure. Some of the other ones that lots of my athletes really like are Lara bars, or Simply bars. You can get those ones at Costco. I've tried to be pretty aware of the price point of some of these products. They can be pretty expensive. I would steer clear of any of the products that promote really low carbohydrate content or the use of a sweetener instead of sugar. Our brains need the sugar, so we don't want something that says less than 5 grams of carbohydrates. No, you want carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Okay, well, for questions, if there's any more, we'll definitely reach out to Heather and try and answer any that we have. So Heather, thank you so much for today, and I apologize for the technical difficulty there.
No problem.
Like we lost a couple, but that's okay. They'll be able to view it later.
Awesome.
So next up, I know I've known this fellow for quite a long time, Dallas. I know you for a very long time. So
Yeah.
let's get started with what you have to share with everyone today.
Okay. I will, I guess, again, for the most part, I think a lot of people in here know me, or I've met you over the years. Grew up here in Saskatchewan playing competitive golf. Lived down in the US from 2011 to 2016, trying to make a go of it on the professional tours, some of the mini tours on the West Coast. 2016, I moved back and completed my kinesiology degree, and as well as my TPI certification. Kind of leading into TPI, I will share my content now.
Yes.
Share screen. All right, everyone can see it. All right, so just to kind of get started, TPI Fitness, or Titleist Performance Institute, is an educational organization that's focused on studying the human body and how it functions in relation to the golf swing. Big part of TPI, and again, a reason why we're probably all here today, they believe, the best path for success for a golfer is going to be building a team of specialists. Again, being swing coaches, maybe such as Steve or Jason, nutritionists such as Heather, fitness professionals like myself, working together for common goals, keeping the golfer in mind. Again, kind of how we work together, I'll touch on here shortly with regards to TPI fitness assessments and how they're built and meant to work. But in essence, it's all here so that we can take away the guesswork that leads to that minimal improvement and frustration. So kind of tailoring to what I do with regards to strength and conditioning, when I'm building a program for a client, their why is usually a major contributor to what I will prescribe them. This can range from someone wanting to gain distance to someone wanting to avoid injury. The TPI assessments, which you'll see at the bottom of this slide, are used to help gain a further understanding of how someone's body moves, any physical limitations that they're currently having, and how they're going to affect their golf swing. The fitness assessment, that first one there, we're able to provide with that a fitness handicap, similar to a golf handicap. It's something that me and the individuals will work with or work towards improving, as well as it helps me sort of identify what areas need the most work. The body swing connection that you see next to that is sort of where my connection with the swing coach starts to come into play. I'll touch on this on the next slide. We also do a strength and power assessment, which is used to find sort of a base point with regards to weight, resistance, power, and speed for progressions of different exercises. On the right here of this screen, you'll see the TPI fitness assessment. These are 16 different drills or exercises, however you want to look at them, that I will go through with a client, looking to see if they can pass them, fail them, and everything in between. Usually, once a client fails a TPI fitness screen, usually I need to start to look towards, the underlying reason for that. This is to then prescribe the proper corrective exercises before we ever move into any strength, speed, or power, which again should hopefully build trust by avoiding injury. The progressions of all these exercises, whatever it may be, is very important, as again, like I just said, it avoids injury, but also still challenges them enough to build strength. The TPI fitness assessment there that you actually see on the right is, if we have a smartphone, it's something that we can actually download. For the most part, they're all doable on our own. I do recommend be picky if we are doing them. Don't just give yourself a perfect score, because obviously I think the only person that has ever scored perfect was Adam Scott. Probably a swing we'd all like to repeat. On this next slide here, just kind of to touch on what I do once I've done the TPI screen, and to kind of lead into how a fitness regimen will be built, I wanted to touch on corrective exercises. The first one, actually, for an example, being our toe touch. It's our 6th TPI fitness screen. It is a very common assessment. Oh, I apologize. There we go. Very common assessment that clients are unable to pass. Usually my attention ends up going to their pelvis and or hips. The excessive anterior tilt is something we see very common today. If you want to think of, if we're wearing a belt, tipping that belt buckle down towards the ground due to high levels of sitting, likely what we're all doing right now. Also, you know, work and screen time can play a part into that as well. Just for a little bit of a biomechanical aspect of our hips, sticking with our toe touch, they work obviously as a hinge, and any physical limitation or inefficient movement will usually end up resulting in compensations elsewhere in the body, especially when performing a complex movement such as the golf swing. You can see here at the bottom, I've listed a few swing characteristics that we tend to see if someone fails our toe touch. Early extension being a loss of posture or a standing up when we perform our downswing. Sway being that lateral movement away from the target during our backswing. And a slide, which is going to be that lateral movement towards the target on our downswing. Both resulting in inconsistent contact and power loss. Here, I'm going to touch on some exercise progressions. Sticking with our toe touch, it is in basic terms, a deadlift. Great exercise for building strength and power. Before we move into that though, we have to then go back to our corrective exercises, starting from progression 1, which would be our supine there on our back, moving into quadruped, hands and knees, half kneeling, standing being the final one. Within each one, as we kind of move into different positions, it starts to require us to stabilize and mobilize on our own. And at the bottom, you'll also see within each progression, we will work through different resistances. On the right here, I would be in a supine position, and I am using a pattern assistance. Something I just wanted to touch on before the season does start up is going to be our social distancing measures that are in place, i.e. no driving range. And just wanted to remind everyone of the importance of having that pre-post round routine to make sure we avoid injury, as well to make sure that we arrive at the first tee ready to play our best. A lot of pre-round exercises that I prescribe will focus on balance, posture, rotation, disassociation, which is going to be the ability to rotate different segments of our body independently one another. If you want to think of in terms of the golf swing, we want to be able to rotate our pelvis, torso, and arms all independently so that we can create that leg or torque that builds that power. As well, we like to prescribe some body swing awareness just so people can get a bit of an understanding as to where their swing might be at the start of the day. On this one of the final slides here, I've just outlined a few different exercises, and I will kind of touch on them. If we want after, I can go through them once we switch the screen around. I was unable to figure out how to get them on here as videos. But the top left one here being our supported deep squat. This is going to help work on some T-spine extension up in our shoulders, which should hopefully help with getting us to the first tee with proper posture. Again, due to a lot of sitting, something we see that's very common is the C posture, or sort of a rounding or hunching of our upper shoulders. As well, with this supported deep squat, you can see we're also starting to work on some hip hinge as we get down deep into that squat. A progression of this for a warm-up exercise, I may end up prescribing someone a squat jump. But again, I want to make sure that they have the T-spine extension and the ability to maintain their posture before we would ever get to that. The next exercise here, you'll see sweep the dust. On the left, I have it performed correctly. This is going to be a bit of a visual feedback for us to see if we are rotating and maintaining our posture. This is a drill that I do almost every hole just to get a feedback for making sure I'm rotating properly. But as you can see, the club will begin to point down at the ground. As well, if we begin to rotate the other way, it'll point towards the sky. On the right side, you'll see if I have some early extension or I'm maybe losing my posture, the club will start to rotate in a more horizontal fashion. On the bottom left, we've got our stork turn. This exercise or pre-round warm-up is going to focus on getting us rotating our pelvis. Here, we're just going to start holding onto our golf club, hooking our foot behind our knee, and we'll end up using that knee to kind of swing similar to a door back and forth as we rotate. When we do this one, I do want to make sure that our hands stay stationary on the club, making sure that our shoulders stay facing forward. This will also help warm up some of that disassociation or ability to rotate independently. The final exercise I have here is going to be our single leg torso turn. Now with this one, main focus for this is definitely going to be balance. But it also is a good warm-up drill if we do experience any sway or slide in our golf swing. If we are someone that sways or moves away from the target during our backswing, I recommend doing this on our trail leg. For a right-handed golfer, this would be our right leg. For a left-handed golfer, this would be our left leg. Not only does this get us a little more balanced on that leg, but it should help us get a better loading into that side. For this exercise, a little bit of feedback for you as well is going to be if you see your foot that is off the ground start swinging side to side, that's going to be our way of knowing that our hips are now still trying to counterbalance our torso rotation. Just want to say thank you to everyone that took the time out to listen. I'm currently working with Craven Sports Services here in Saskatoon. Unfortunately, we won't be able to reopen our training center until phase 3, but we are offering virtual sessions. If you are interested, the number is there for you to contact. My email, if you have any questions that may come up later or you're interested in getting together. And I do provide a lot of social media exercises. The usual is going to be focusing on the correctives, just to make sure that I'm not putting anyone in any of those vulnerable positions. I don't want some people thinking that they can go into a clean and jerk before we've ever performed a squat or a deadlift. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to go ahead. I also broadcasting. And we're all there. Yeah, and that was kind of the end of my spiel. The thing I did want to kind of touch on too, now that I've got some people face to face here, the big thing with the TPI, and I touched on it a little bit, but it is meant for all of the specialists to sort of work together for that golfer, in the sense that, you know, if Steve or Jason send someone to me and say, hey, look, this guy cannot get into his right side, that's at least a way for me to focus their program then on something that we know is specific for their golf swing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. No, that's some great information, Dallas. And, you know, with social media, like there's so much information out there, and my best,
Tons of it.
yeah, right. We can all be experts, but my
And
suggestion is to call and get in touch with you or somebody that's close to you to work on things like this. Cause like
absolutely. And the nice thing with our TPI program or access is usually with all of our clients or anyone that's interested, I can set them up basically where we set up a TPI app on their phone. They sign in and they can access their workouts with videos and reps and sets and all that. So again, for say college kids or maybe those that travel throughout the summer playing tournaments, it's a way for them to still access their strength and conditioning program without having to remember it word for word, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to May 15th.
Yeah, I've been doing enough chipping in the backyard. I'm ready to hit the ball.
Right on. Does anybody have any more questions? If not, once again, on behalf of Golf Saskatchewan, our board of directors, staff, volunteers, thank you guys for being patient with the initial start and participating in the webinar. And hopefully you guys learned some information today. And yeah, we'll look to see you on the golf course.